We're glad you all are here today on this snowy, cold morning. Any predictions on how many people we'll have on Zoom today? Got lots of people coming in. Let them in the door there, Zoe.
Oh, sorry. I'm switching up. I was trying to get my screen to actually show me people in the room instead of.
It's like
We have one of these today. No idea. All right. Hey, church, before we get started, I have two things I want to say. One is, can we admire this lovely wreath? This trans-seasonal wreath, this wreath for all seasons. So my husband and son were going to come in. Sorry, I'm getting feedback on the little phone here, so let me push that button. That might work. Okay, I got it. Nope, I didn't get it. There we go. I got it. So my husband and son were going to come in early this morning, but one, I did not get my act together. Two, Anthony got his booster shot yesterday and he was really hurting. So I'm like, you do not need to come into church early with your sore arm to take this thing down. This opens an opportunity for any of you who would like to stay after and help my husband, Greg Franceth, sitting in the back row, take down the wreath after church. And it also reminds me that we have a Barbara Haddon. We have a Barbara Haddon who is a gift from God, but we also have a chancel team that helps make the sanctuary look beautiful. Yes. I don't think there are any people on the team other than you, but if you would like to be part of making the sanctuary look lovely and keeping it up, reach out to us and we can make good things happen. Does that sound good? Okay, now here's the thing. I know nothing about sports. Today's a big day. Okay, but Kathy was telling me this thing that is so lovely. I'm like, I stop talking. You have to share it with the whole congregation because sometimes we move through the world and the world gives us the steady diet of ick, of yuckiness. And sometimes we need to be reminded of the goodness of humanity. So this is not the board report. This is the report from the sports world that if your minister had a clue about sports, she would have included in some way. But we will not let the moment pass without celebrating the goodness of human beings. So come tell the story.
So we always hear so much bad about sportsmanship. So last week, there was the big game in Kansas City and Buffalo, and Kansas City came back in 13 seconds left in the game and tied the game. It went into overtime and Kansas City won. And Buffalo and the Buffalo quarterback were devastated. They thought they had won. They thought they were going on to the championship game. And Kansas City had experienced that a few years ago, that they lost in a major game. So what happened is Kansas City Sports World decided that they would donate to the quarterback's fund that he does for the hospital fund at a church for at a hospital for kids. And so Kansas City, as of like Wednesday or so, had given $430,000 to that hospital for kids. It was amazing. And that's what sportsmanship should be.
So that's just your little piece of good news about the nature of humanity. And you know it's true because you heard it from the pulpit. Y'all laugh. I think we should start worship. Would you like to speak the words? And folks at home, I am so glad that you are with us. This is a particularly like snowy, icy day. It's mostly okay out there, but there are some spots. So I imagine we might have some people who are choosing to stay home. I'm glad that you are finding a way to be with us. Also, isn't this pretty? Just noticing how nice that light is on the wall. Gay is going to lead us in our opening rituals, and I will light the chalice for us.
We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church of the open mind. This is the church of the helping hands. This is the church of the loving heart. Together, we care for the church and each other. Could we have the small group choir please come up?
Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to St. John's Unitarian Universalist Community. My name is Gay Glasscott and I'm serving as worship associate this morning for our growing, journeying community. We welcome all of you to our service, especially those of you who might be searching for a spiritual home. Many of us were once too, seeking for something larger than ourselves to which we could belong. A sense of rootedness to hold us as we create meaning together. We do that really well here at St. John's, though not perfectly. In this congregation, we do not strive for perfection, but for authenticity and for connection. Whether it's your first time in worship or your 100th time, we hope that you'll find here questions that will stretch you, people to befriend you, and liberal religious values that challenge you to join us in loving, boldly, living justly, and participating always with open mind and open heart. All of us have gathered here to walk each other home today. Thank you for being with us. Just a gentle reminder to please silence your cell phones. Thanks. Now, if you would join me in our affirmation. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands.
All right, every time we gather, we are a new people. And coming together as a new people, we share our sorrows, we share our joys. We make a new promise each week that we will support each other. We will celebrate together, we will mourn together, and together we will find a way forward. We've been taking the offering during this time, so I invite you to come forward and put money in the plate to sustain the good work of this church. But also I invite you to take a stone or two to represent your joys or sorrows this week and place them in the dish of sand. You will find that we create a new mosaic each and every week. And no matter how any of us feels between Sundays, now is a time to remember that in a very true way, you are not alone. I invite you to share of your spirit as you are willing and able. If you are online, please feel free to add your comments in chat and I will try to pick them up there and place a stone for you also. Oh my. I have messed up. All right, my friends, I pushed the wrong button and have messed up. Can I ask, Anne, can you check chat and see if there is anything in chat for us? So who was that? Joy celebrates her mom's 87th birthday. That's very good. Yes, Ivan was diagnosed with COVID-19, and I am glad to hear that it is mild. Is that it? Okay. I will place 2 stones for them, and then I want to share a gratitude from Charles S. That his brother is having a difficult medical treatment. Charles, am I right that you're saying that he is handling this with clarity, intelligence, and peace? And that is a blessing when things are difficult. Friends, I'm going to step down and place just a few more stones, and then I will return to the pulpit and continue. I have to say, one of the unexpected things is I stepped down to place the stones and the flowers smell beautiful. And those are given today to remember Emily Hodges' mother's birthday. Jeff, who takes such good care of us in our building, came in to work this morning and went home not feeling great. So we are thinking of him and hoping that he feels better soon. And Dot, who sings in our choir and is just such a steady, lovely presence with the community, is in the hospital right now, doing okay, and got the flowers that we sent and is very appreciative. Let's hold both of them in prayer if we could. Will you join? Actually, if the small group singers would like to come forward, they're going to lead us in Spirit of Life. If you guys want to come forward and just take a place, I will begin the prayer and then we'll have a little silence and then we can sing Spirit of Life. Is that all right? Okay. Holy One of blessing, we name your presence in us and among us. We see the hand of kindness moving in unexpected places. We see it in the world of sports, where competition turns to compassion. We see it in the world of healthcare, where we face our great challenges with gratitude and dignity and strength of character. We see it in the community that opens its arms and its hearts and its door to welcome those who are looking for a place to rest their spirit, who are looking for a company to do the work of justice, who are looking for people to call their own. We pray that the spirit of life moves in us and among us, calling us ever forward to the goodness that life can be. Thank you. I would like to invite Gay forward to lead us in a responsive reading. This is number 585 in the gray hymnal.
This is called Counsels, and it's by Marge Piercy. I'll read the dark, and you come in with the light. We must sit down and reason together. In the dark, we could propose and describe and suggest. No one would speak more than twice. No one would speak less than once. Perhaps we could begin to listen. The women must learn to say, I think this is so. After each speaks, she or he will say a ritual phrase. Thank you.
Well, let me begin with a word of gratitude for those who came to the grief group yesterday. Grief is a sneaky thing. It can be large or small, but left unacknowledged, left unmourned, it will gain power and encumber our living. So thank you to those who came, and for any who would like to join us, we will meet again towards the end of next month. We need space to be honest with grief because there is a lot of grief. One of the things I grieve these days is the absence or the limited availability of that robust sort of conversation that used to be commonplace in coffee hour and other places, right? Maybe it's because everybody is worn down and tired. It takes more energy to do anything these days. I think we may have a limited ability to be together. And so we want to spend the time that we have as gently and positively as possible. We want to be pleasant with one another. But pleasant looks different to different people. Once long ago and far away, I preached at a lovely church, and after I was done, every lovely person told me that the sermon was lovely. This did not seem at all accurate to me because for the fullness of the worship service, no one changed their expression at all. No one laughed, no one sighed, no one snarled or turned their head to the side. There was like nothing. And then they were like, oh, thank you. That was very amusing and very delightful. And I'm like, really? And I turned to my husband and I said, dear husband of mine who was raised with the attitudes or platitudes of the South in Charlotte, North Carolina, and with the Midwestern politeness in Michigan, I do not know what these people are saying, for they do not emote. And he said, do not worry, I am Midwestern. I speak their language. Let me translate for you. And I knew that that was a church where I could not serve because I would never know what was happening there. And yet Greg was perfectly at home. He and I make a good team together. We're both needed. Even as a young person, I liked UUs the best, and he was raised UU from the cradle. When I was in middle school, I met the girl who would become my very best friend and closest to my heart for all time. I love her and I loved her family, and they were informed and engaged and willing to talk through issues of the day with vigor and energy for any cause as they saw it. They were members of the small Unitarian church in Tulsa. They were, of course, also dysfunctional as any family is, okay? No one gets off this rock without their share of troubles. But I also felt at home with them from the very beginning. I loved being with them. It is my pleasure and honor to have named my son after her father, although he was Tony and my son is Anthony because they are different people. But I like to think that something of Tony's kindness to animals and his willingness to sit down and have the conversation and hash out big ideas, I like to think that all of that might live in my kid. Something of the chosen family passes on with the name. When I met Greg, in spite of his protestation that he speaks Midwestern, it was much the same. The willingness to have engaged and informed conversation where people did not have to agree to stay at the table was common in his family. Granted, they were less animated than others I know, but there was still enough dysfunction to remind me that they were real people. And I love my husband, and part of that love was planted in the late 1980s over the hot topics of the day with his parents who were active in the church in Charlotte. Just curious, how many of you have those dinner time conversations that will take on any political hot topic coming or going? Yes. That's a smattering. I kind of, they say don't talk about religion or politics. And then that's like all I ever talk about. But you can do that if you know that you're family and can stay at the table, right? You can do that if you know that you love each other and can disagree and it will be okay. If you have trust enough to know that you're still going to be in relationship when everything is said and done. And it feels like something's shifting these days. It feels like we're in a bit of a winner takes all sort of attitude. And that's like, oh, that just really puts a damper on our ability to be present with each other. These days, when voting rights and reproductive rights and racial justice are all on the line, these days of weariness and expressive eyes and hidden smiles, these days when everything is a political game or up for political gain, these days, low stakes, high energy engagements seem to be rare, and I miss them. I miss the way we used to engage, where everyone came to the table as friends and left as friends, understanding that we have different perspectives and nuanced expressions of our values, and that is okay. Years ago, this guy who studies congregational life, and it has a great name. This guy's name is Speed Lees, which is really cool. He came up with a conflict scale for congregations. It goes from 1 to 5 with an additional level of 0, which he calls depression, but I think of as fear. It's where nothing ever happens because nobody says anything, because everybody's afraid that if they say anything or do anything, everything will fall apart. So everybody's walking on eggshells all the time. That's painful. That's a painful way to be, to have to watch everything you say out of fear. 0 level conflict sounds quiet, but it is always painful around the edges. So what I'm saying is that to be a conflict-free congregation is not desirable, because then what would you do? Like literally, what would you do? What would you do? There was that story of the monk who sat really still and then he died and they like encased him and made him a statue. We could go that route. Or not. I'm much more inclined to like an active, engaged congregation. And that is always going to come with some level of conflict, to look out on the world and say, this is not okay. And to be okay with the not okay of it, enough to be motivated to act. The first level of conflict in Speedley's schema is just problem solving. This, I think, is feel-good conflict. Something needs doing and it's on the table and everybody can see it and think about it and share about it. We can toss around ideas, we can play with possibilities and outcomes, we can strategize and we can get into the work. There are 2 examples from the board, and I know I've shared at least one of these with you several times, but I still love it. There are 2 examples from the board at St. John's that I just love, love, love. So I'm gonna share them with you again. We had a vote before the board and one person was out of sync with everybody else. And he said, oh, I'm just different from everybody else. You go on, it doesn't matter. And another board member said, no, it does matter. Can we add 5 minutes to the agenda and just hear what you have to say and why you think the way you think? And everybody said yes. So they added 5 minutes to the agenda and they heard him out and they asked questions and they nodded in understanding and they gained perspective and nobody changed their mind on anything. It was exactly as it was before, and yet it was completely different because that deeper humanity had been acknowledged. It wasn't about the letter of the law. We have the votes, we pass the motion, we go on. It was about the humanity of saying, this is a person among us who has come for the sake of leadership of this good institution, and we think that they are worth hearing out because we can learn from them. And then there was another instance years before that where a congregant who has a particularly, I would say, would you know what I meant if I said he had a hot style of talking? Would that describe it? He says, well, I think X, Y, Z about this. And it came across as if it were God's truth. And across the table, someone said, well, I think A, B, C about this. And they went back and forth until one of them said, yeah, I think you're right. Thank you. And then we went on. And if you had just caught that little sliver, you would have thought, oh, there's going to be a fist fight. Someone go get the ice and the bandages. There's going to be blood spilled. It was never going to be that way. It was these 2 individuals' personal style coming to the table to share their truth and, wait for it, listen carefully to the other person. It was the same story, different temperature, but the same story, that same deep respect of, I want to hear what you have to say. I love that. I love it when that happens, not because the right thing happens or the best thing wins the day, but because what happens in those instances is that we become more human with each other. It is the most deeply human need to be heard, to hear, to be acknowledged, to be seen, to be honored for who you are. When people on the same team, you can disagree about things, but we're all in this together. We're all St. Johners. When people on the same team respond with curiosity and respect, when we genuinely listen, when we want to know, even if we don't agree, even if we know that we're never going to agree, but we want to know. I love that. That is good church. That is good church. But if we don't take care of the human, if we disagree or start with a defensive position or dismiss the authority of the person talking, we can get into the place where that creative first level of conflict escalates and becomes more tense. Lees calls the second level disagreement. It's where people are more afraid of getting hurt, so they are guarded and cautious. And we're still working on a problem, but there is a hesitancy to engage. You might keep back information because they think it will be used against them. Oh, it's a tough place to be in. Have you been in that place where you're just like, oh, it's so painful, and it's even more painful when it happens in church. The way, this is Mitra, not Lee's, but the way around this is to return to our deeper humanity. Can you use your imagination and take the other person's perspective? Can you slow down and be human together? Can we define with clarity what our shared goals are? Because if we can't do any of that, as the conflict just gets more, right? And then you end up with like these win-lose dynamics where people are pitted against each other and they're like waiting for the other person to show weakness so they can pounce. At this point, we might have lost the churchiness of the moment, but there's always a way back, and the way back is always through greater engagement with our humanity. And I said earlier that we are a mosaic people. We come with our joys and our sorrows and our hurts and our happinesses, and we need each other. There are times in community where we need to be seen and heard and acknowledged in the fullness of our being by people who are one step outside of the conflict, and that's okay. It's absolutely okay to have facilitators help get people back on track. All right. Believe it or not, there are levels above that, but you can imagine it's fight or flight. It's like this, like really angry, trying to destroy everybody. Let's just not ever go there. Okay, we just won't do that. That won't be a thing and we won't worry about it, right? Right. I know I started by talking about healthy debate and conversations and ended up talking about congregational dynamics. But the truth is every congregation is made up of people. And as I'm standing here and looking out at you and the invisible people on Zoom, I know that we are coming from literally different generations and different family systems and different structures. For some of you, the lively debate was life-giving. And for some of us, we were just taught that the way to get through life was to be pleasant. Don't rock the boat. Don't upset anybody. Defer. Your voice doesn't really matter, right? Like, is that a part of the fabric? And for some of us, disagreements were met with violence. And here's the thing. I know even by talking about conflict in a congregation, that can be mighty painful, because in church, which you want to be a safe, warm, lovely place, you don't want that which reminds you of the pain of that past. I have absolute confidence in each and every one of us, in our ability to understand ourselves enough to be able to engage with the other. If you know yourself, if you know your story, you can work in ways to transcend it. Let me use myself as an example. So I did this class on intercultural competency, bold conversations, how to speak about difficult things across the divide, right? Part of it was doing this inventory, this conflict style inventory, to find out what your conflict style was. This particular inventory divided the world into a grid with 4 boxes. And they have given this test to people all around the world. So they know, generally speaking, generally speaking, where people in different ethnic and regional groups place in this grid. So I tested remarkably high in both verbal and emotional engagement. I tend to be a little bit passionate about things I believe in. And on the grid, I came up like right between your typical white North American and Eastern European. Anybody want to go with me to Romania? No, I mean, I kind of looked at that one, yeah, that explains something. But what that means is that I am plugged in a way where I can get what I want by following the rules, right? And effectively running over people who are in a quadrant that is more agreeable and more inclined to walk away from conflict or want to keep the peace, right? Am I making sense? It's really hard to stay in the pulpit today. So I could say, well, I did everything that I was supposed to do. I asked the question, is this okay with you? I got your input, which was, of course it's okay with me. Everything you do is fine. And then I went ahead with what I wanted. And then like technically, legally, like by the letter of the law, I would be golden. I did what I was supposed to do. But to what end? Why does that matter? Like if I were like really self-righteous and I knew I had the answer, I have the answer, we must get this done. And I will use my conflict inventory style knowledge to finesse and to manipulate and to find my way to get everyone to agree with me. And then by the letter of the law, I will have everything exactly as it should be. And I will have met my end, right? Anybody else feel like, I need to go like wash my hands or take a bath? It just feels deeply, deeply unclean. Because what that does is it dismisses and diminishes the humanity of the person you are with. It takes more time. And it's hard work. It's like genuinely hard work to try to figure out what are the questions I can ask? How can I remain present with this other person? How do I engage in a way that will elicit from them the best of their sensibilities and their passion about this thing? Because I got to tell you, even if you have like a very, very conflict avoidant style, that doesn't mean you don't have heart, doesn't mean you don't have passion. And if we who have the skill to run over other people are not mindful, we will complete the task and lose the reason for being. So we have to be in this together. Doesn't mean we have to agree, but we have to be willing to see each other in the beauty of our complexity. And always add that 5 minutes to say, tell me how this is for you. What are you hearing or feeling here? About 3 weeks ago, I messed up pretty badly on a pastoral care thing. And I was thinking about, I'm usually pretty good at that. How did I get that so wrong? And you know what it was, is that I was rushing. I had things to do and I was just rushing and I missed the mark. We're not talking about getting things done quickly, correctly, efficiently. We're talking about getting things done humanely, with a deep respect for the holiness that lives in each and every one of us, even people who we don't agree with, even people who are difficult. And sometimes that means meeting people where they are. And that second example of the two guys at the board who looked like they were yelling at each other, but they were really just talking. I love that. Sometimes that's fine. But you can't really do that with the person who's conflict avoidant, because that's not going to get you the actual exchange. Okay. Why am I doing this sermon now? Why am I doing this sermon now? It's like the middle of COVID time. There is no conflict. We have a very peaceable congregation. Everybody is doing well. Why now? Because now is exactly the time we should be talking about conflict, because we don't have any, right? Like the board is working on some good projects, so that problem solving sort of conflict level, but nobody's yelling at anybody. It's all chill. It's all good. But I am aware, because I have been here a while, I am aware that our default organizational mechanisms sometimes strongly resemble Procter and Gamble. Yes. Because that is where our members come from, and that is the world that works here, literally works in Cincinnati. So over decades, we have included in our way of doing things from the corporate world. Where are we mostly working? With the biggest influence in the corporate world? Procter & Gamble. Who runs the show at Procter & Gamble? People who got promoted in power in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s. And who are those people? So if we don't upset the apple cart, if we don't do something to disrupt this, we will keep on with a style that replicates what we have known and have been, which will tend, not always, but which will tend to be more transactional than transformative. Because transformative is hard. And Buddha and Jesus, they were around a long time ago, and they made us some really good promises. And we are still working on it, right? So transformation is hard, slow, messy work. But if you want to move that metric, move that data point, right? Like I always say, data are not knowledge, knowledge is not wisdom. That is not a Mitra original. That comes from, I read it from a science fiction writer who got it from someone else. It's not original, but it's true. Data are not wisdom. So if I tell you the data to win my point in an argument, but I don't listen to your perspective, I have shown no wisdom. In Speedley's work, which I really do like, he does tend to say things like, well, at this point, people get emotional. If y'all weren't emotional, you wouldn't have come to church. You wouldn't have signed on to Zoom. You wouldn't be engaged in this voluntary effort. If you didn't have some passion to create a beautiful world where everybody is treated equally and fairly, you wouldn't have showed up this morning. Personal stories matter, passions matter. And it matters that we find ways of including the all, and honoring the humanity of each and every one. Now, you ready? Hold on to your hats. I'm going to say something controversial. Among UUs, we typically deal with this by creating covenants of right relation. So we can write down and have a written thing that says that this is the way that we are going to behave together. And that will include everybody if everybody abides by the covenant of right relation. I've been in ministry for 15 years, and I have seen the standing covenant of right relations work exactly 0 times. It only works to beat up people. I've seen it in this church where people were arguing about peace, which cracks me up. You can't argue about peace. You just can't. You're not allowed. So the problem with writing down the rules and then like putting them on a piece of paper is that this becomes your reference point and not this and not this, right? So the problem is anytime you reach the point of saying, you are in violation of the second paragraph of the third article, and I am here to call you back into covenant and make sure you abide by our covenant of right relations. You've lost. The moment has passed. It's all over. You are now arguing about peace. It's not going to work. What does work, interestingly, is the process of creating those covenants. How is it possible that the process works and the product doesn't? The process is messy and it's engaged and it requires that we come to the table together, and it guarantees that everybody are going to have to give up something, or going to have to listen deeply, or going to have to be challenged and changed. The process of creating and keeping covenant is powerfully transformational. But if you write it down and you legalize it and you put it on a shelf, it becomes an object to use by the righteous to beat up those who they feel are not doing things their way. I walked out of years ago, I walked out of a meeting and I said, part of my brain said to the other part of my brain, Jesus said, the new law will be written on your heart, not in the policy manual. Jesus did not say that. Not just about the policy manual, but the actual quote comes from a First Testament prophet who Jesus would have read and known, right? But the point is, it is what we carry in our heart that matters. The give and take of doing the work of covenant that holds no secret agenda but honors the person before you, the deep listening without agenda but with some small amount of awe. Which is what I'm saying is that when we come together and stand person to person, we should always have some sense of awe for the person who is before us. We do not know what they have conquered to be there in that moment. And they do not know and will never know the complexities of our story. The only way to come together and share space is to do so with an amount of wonder and curiosity and even awe. The deep listening without agenda, but some small amount of awe, that is work that is difficult and it might be conflictual, but it is whole work. It does not shame and it does not blame. It doesn't strategize or use anybody as a means to an end. It's not in it to check the box. It's in it to transform the community. It is kind and it is present and it is strong and it is gentle. And it is brave enough to stay in the game when we feel confused and we need to find our feet again, but we're going to trust that this community will hold us until we can get there. It is the deep humanity that wants to know deep humanity. Where there is healthy conflict, there is mission and there is purpose, there is hope and there is possibility. And more than anything, where there is healthy conflict, there is active, engaged, caring, there is love. When we disagree and can add 5 minutes to the agenda, that is an act of love. And that is enough. That is absolutely enough. I'm going to stop talking. And I'm going to find the order of service. Oh, announcements and board moment. Kathy, hi. Oh, Kathy is wonderful. She's our board president. She has the board moment, and she also shared the sporting news with us this morning. So many, many hats today.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Shell, and I am serving as the president of the board this church year. Did you see the articles and photos in the e-news about the assessment of the sanctuary walls to determine what repairs are needed? The board is grateful for the work of the master planning team, and we look forward to receiving the report from the engineering firm within the next few weeks. Newcomers may not know that St. John's has a master planning team for the major building improvements that was created before the pandemic. Now, in 2022, we have hired a new architect firm and are refining that original plan to better reflect input from the congregation. In order for the architects to hear from you, we'll have a meeting here in the sanctuary and on Zoom on February 27th. It will be shortly after the Sunday service. Please watch the e-news for more information, and we hope you will participate. It is the time of year when the leadership committee is looking for members who wish to volunteer for various leadership roles within St. John's. If you are interested in getting more involved at St. John's, reach out to Edie Holder, Erna, and Matthew. They're all here in the sanctuary, who are the members of the leadership committee. If you've read the board minutes, you know that Reverend Mitra is planning to be on sabbatical for several months this fall. You'll be hearing more about that soon. One last thing, board members will be reaching out to St. John's teams to see how you're doing and what support you need in 2022. Stay safe, stay warm, and hooday.
I know. I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. A few more announcements. The flowers, thank you, Emily, given to honor Emily's mother. Hey, we have this thing here, and I know a lot of you are new. So, you know, I said, we're not supposed to talk about religion and politics. You're not supposed to talk about sex either, but we do at St. John's. Years ago, the Unitarian Universalists and the United Church of Christ got together and created this comprehensive sex education curriculum that focused not only on sex, but also on healthy relationships and healthy boundaries and identity and all sorts of good stuff. That program, the name of that program is Our Whole Lives, but we typically just call it OWL, O-W-L. It has been many years since we've had new leaders trained up really fresh, and we need to do that again. To be a facilitator for our OWL program, you need to be able to pass a background check, and you need to have a really strong sense of ethical boundaries. You need to put yourself under the authority of the church. In other words, you don't actually get to make the decisions on things. You need to follow some ethical guidelines and rules that help keep everybody safe. You are not anointed to go forth and say what you want and do as you please. I honestly believe that this is one of the most important things we offer for our young people. If you think you might be interested in helping with that, please reach out to Marie and Nonley. You can find her after the service today, or you can look her up online, call her at the office. So that is something that we are looking to get restarted. And tomorrow night from 6 to 7 will be a worship roundtable meeting. It is really just an hour, because I think that from that hour we can do some strategizing and breaking out for people who want to write sermons or people who just want to work on work as a worship associate or bring specific things. So if you are interested in doing that, please do let me know. Finally, all this talk about conflict, we're sort of in this weird Zen-like COVID time that will end. And our call to serve the world, I don't know. I don't know how it's changed, where it's changed. I want to invite you who are here in the sanctuary, those who are online can participate also, to go look at our timeline and add the context, right? Like we were founded in 1814. Was there anything happening in 1814 that might matter? We became St. John's, we dropped German from our name and we started speaking English. When did we do that? Why did we do that? How does that matter? What were we doing in the 60s and 70s and 80s? What was the context around us? Because I think by looking at the context of the church, we might be able to think forward, right? The timeline does not end in a brick wall. There's space on the end of it. We might be able to be, what are we called to do in this world that we share? So afterwards, there are markers and tables and stuff in the fellowship hall. Please pop on over, think about, you can take your phone and Google up anything you want and add context to our history timeline. I think that would be an interesting thing to do. All right. Can I have the small group singers come forward, please? At the end of the day, here in this place, we believe that there is a spirit that lives in us and among us that is more than who we are alone. And it is by coming into community that we might be more together, more beautiful, more powerful than we are apart. And it begins with building bridges. Our closing words this morning come from Laura Lynn Bellamy, who writes, "If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that they might come true. If you have known love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world." Go in peace, friends. Stay for conversation if you can, if you will, and we will be together again soon. Amen.
Hi, everybody. I hope some of you will stay today for conversation with Zoe and me, or take a quick break and come back.
Yeah, I'm gonna get more coffee.
That's a
Can't
good
have
idea.
coffee hour without coffee.
It is coffee hour. There we go. Sorry, I can't help at home. I see Jim Jebson. I don't believe we've met. Welcome to St. John's Zoom service. Right here. Looks like Jim just left. Oh.
That sounds like a good plan.
Yes. So should we go up the ladder? Hey, Greg, how are you? Are you here to help?
I think I will
Right now.
mute the sanctuary now. As folks chit chat and they get ready to take down that big wreath. I wonder who volunteered. It's great to see the view from the back. I'm so glad we have that back camera. Marty, are you there with us?